So I have the privilege to actually introduce why we are here today and how we try to address the challenge that we faced collectively, are still facing in large measure, but to which we have made significant strides forward. If I could get the first slide, please. So why? Everybody has seen this pictorial in one shape or another, but the why was pretty clear at the time the Neurodegeneration Strategic Governance Group was formed, which is we were facing an impending tsunami of dementia across the globe. There was really a sense of urgency in the setting of many failed interventions. So that sense of urgency just got more and more acute across all stakeholders, industry, patient advocacy, governments, NGOs, and so the question was then, what can we do? And this is a global question. And if you take away anything from what I say today, is that the IMI and what it did really fit a global fabric of efforts to tackle this problem and was in many ways a role model. So we then came together and kicked off the neurodegeneration SDG, as it was called, together with great colleagues, Mike Hutton and Georg Stappen, and started our journey with this group, trying to tackle this problem in an end-to-end fashion. If I can get the next slide, which is, I think, my disclaimer. I'm talking as a at a personal level, so don't hold anything against my my employer. Next slide, please. And we spent quite some time in defining what should our mission be and how can we cover the needs of all the stakeholders, really from an end-to-end point of view. And therefore, we started in saying, how can we identify and validate new drug targets and molecules, as well as biomarkers. So because these neurodegenerative diseases have protracted clinical courses, there's a high need for showing what the interventions are doing or what the disease is doing in a more sensitive manner. And you'll see a great example later on with Amipad. We also talked about new trial methodologies with thinking about new endpoints, which could include digital endpoints. We have a great project called Radar around that, so that we could speed up clinical development. But then also we realized there has to be work done on how do we ensure that access to treatment can be ensured once we have it. How can we improve healthcare system preparedness? And we had projects there. So message of this slide is we really approach this in an end-to-end view, from basic science all the way to healthcare delivery. Next slide. Within that setting, we focused mainly on Alzheimer's disease, as you can see here, but we also thought there's many parallels between these neurodegenerative diseases. And I'll just pick out the protein misfolding as one, where there's several of the neurodegenerative diseases that really are a bane to society on top of Alzheimer's disease, like Parkinson's, ALS, Huntington's, that share features. And can we leverage findings from one to the other? We also were clear that there were certain things we were not going to do. I'm giving here traumatic brain injury as an example. But so we want to make sure we still could focus during this journey on what was most relevant in our minds. Could I have the next slide? And part of what was so great doing this was the degree of participation. And this is not even a complete list of companies that joined us in this endeavor. And what was noticeable was that it wasn't just the classical pharma companies that came together to this. There's others, but I can give the example of GE. So a company focused on imaging, medical technologies. We have had interactions with other companies that were more on wearables, and just to show that the diversity of this effort really was sought out as a core strength, so that it's not just the classical players that are trying to solve this. We are really embracing all kinds of contributors. Next slide. I apologize, this is hand-drawn by me on an iPad way back when, but I wanted to reflect that track from disease understanding, finding targets, finding NMEs that would address those targets, a key point translating then the discovery signal into a human signal, and get better clinical trials, generate the evidence that's necessary for showing that in the real world this is an impact, and then regulators who became a core partner also, because they of course saw this problem as well. And I will say that they have been great contributors to the thinking that we have deployed in many of our projects. And then ultimately payers, right? This is where the rubber will hit the road and access is provided. So that's the end-to-end view. And if you then, there's a couple of builds, think about, and yeah, just keep building until the end. Thank you very much. IMI, you can see, I had to kind of fit it all in. But the message from me to you is that the library of IMI projects that Carlos will talk about later really covered this spectrum from end to end, and was there by joining the global community that was doing this as well. And AMP, for example, is from the NIH. ATNI is, of course, a well-known one. But you can see all the other one, Dementia Platform UK. And what we tried to do was to make sure that these projects could interdigitate, that we weren't duplicating too much. And I think that was another great feature of the ND SDG, was just bringing the stakeholders together. And I think that has led to the outcome we have today, where, as you will see in what follows, there really was a great impact on our understanding, on the diversity of targets we go after, how we measure evidence in the real world, and how we prepare healthcare systems. And with that, I'd like to close and thank again for the opportunity to speak.